The sky turned dark over New York City at 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. At first, people thought it was just an odd storm. Then they looked up. The massive ship blocked the sun like a giant black plate. It wasn't alone. All across Earth, in every major city, the same thing happened at the same time. Samantha Wright had been working at the Nevada Desert Array for 5 years. She studied languages, not just human ones, but possible alien ones too. Many of her friends made fun of her career choice. Now, as she stared at the computer screen showing signals from the ships above, no one was laughing anymore. "Are you getting this?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. Her coworker, Ben, nodded without speaking. His face had turned pale. The signals were unlike anything they had seen before. Strange patterns that changed and repeated in ways that almost made sense. But not quite. Samantha had trained for this moment her whole career, but the reality of it made her stomach tight with fear. "We need to call Washington," Ben finally said. "Now." Within hours, Samantha found herself on a military plane. She had barely had time to pack a small bag. The plane was filled with other experts, scientists, military officers, and government officials. All of them looked worried. Across the aisle sat Alan Foster. He was famous for his work on space physics. 5 years ago, he had written a paper about how aliens might travel between stars. People had called him crazy then. Now everyone wanted to know what else he might be right about. "Do you think they're hostile?" Samantha asked him quietly. Alan looked out the small window. Even from this height, they could see one of the ships hovering over a distant city. "They didn't call first," he said simply. "That's not a good sign." In Washington, things were chaotic. The president had been moved to a secure location. The vice president met them at the Pentagon in a room deep underground. Maps and screens covered the walls, showing the positions of the alien ships. "They're over every major city," General Howard explained. "London, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing, Cairo, everywhere. 37 ships in total." "Have they made contact?" Samantha asked. "Not yet, but they're scanning us. Our satellites, our power grids, our military bases. They're mapping everything." Colonel William Carter entered the room. He walked with the confidence of someone used to being in charge during a crisis. Everyone turned to him immediately. "The United Nations is meeting an emergency session," he said. "But we need to understand what we're dealing with before we can respond properly." He turned to Samantha. "I understand you're the best xenolinguist we have, Lieutenant Wright. Can you make sense of their communications?" Samantha swallowed hard. "I'm trying, sir. The patterns are complex, but there are regularities. I think with a few more hours I might have something basic." "You have 1 hour," Carter said. Then he softened his tone. "The fate of humanity might depend on understanding what they want." Samantha nodded and got to work with her team. The pressure was enormous, but somehow it helped her focus. Patterns began to emerge from the alien signals. Not words exactly, but definite meanings. Then, exactly 1 hour after Colonel Carter had given her the deadline, all the screens in the room flickered. The alien ships were broadcasting a message. The same message to every television, radio, and computer on Earth. The message was simple. An image of Earth, followed by an image of beings kneeling, followed by a countdown clock set for 48 hours. "I don't think we need a linguist to understand that," Alan Foster said quietly. "They want our surrender," Colonel Carter agreed, "within 48 hours. The president arrived shortly after. Leaders from around the world joined by secure video link. They all looked equally shocked and afraid. "What are our options?" the president asked. "Our weapons might not even affect their ships," General Howard said. "We've tried to scan them, but our technology can't penetrate their hulls." "So we surrender?" the British Prime Minister asked over the video link. "No," Colonel Carter said firmly. "We buy time." He outlined his plan. Earth would appear to consider the aliens' terms. They would request a meeting to discuss surrender conditions. Meanwhile, they would study the aliens, look for weaknesses, and prepare. These beings, whatever they call themselves, clearly think, We're easy targets, Carter said. They expect us to either surrender immediately or launch a useless attack. They don't expect us to think strategically. Samantha continued working with her team throughout the meeting. As the world leaders debated, she made a breakthrough. Sir, she interrupted, I've decoded more of their language. They call themselves the Valkyrie. And they've done this before. All eyes turned to her. Their communications reference other worlds, other species. 17 of them. All conquered. The room fell silent. How did they win? Colonel Carter asked. Superior technology, mostly, but also because those species fought the way the Valkyrie expected. Direct confrontation. Alan Foster leaned forward. Humans didn't become the dominant species on Earth by being stronger than everything else. We did it by outsmarting our prey, by adapting, by being persistent. Colonel Carter nodded slowly. Then that's how we'll fight them, not as prey but as predators. They drafted a response to the Valkyrie. Earth would send representatives to discuss terms. The meeting would take place in 24 hours. As the message was sent, Samantha received new signals from the Valkyrie ships. She translated them quickly, her heart racing. Sir, she said to Colonel Carter, they're communicating with each other about us. They're saying humans are unusual. We're not reacting with the same fear as other species. They think we're in denial about our situation. Carter almost smiled. Good. Let them underestimate us. In orbit around Earth, Commander Krelzon received Earth's response. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large black eyes. This was his 5th conquest mission. All had gone the same way. Initial resistance, then surrender, then harvesting of the planet's resources. They wished to discuss terms, he told his officers. As expected. Should we simply destroy one of their cities now? Asked Sub-Commander Vextrol. To ensure they understand their position? Krelzon considered this. No, they are cooperating. There is no need for demonstrations yet. What Krelzon didn't understand was that on the planet below, humans were already preparing for a type of warfare the Valkyrie had never encountered before. The humans weren't gathering armies or launching missiles. They were thinking like the predators they had evolved to be, patient, observant, and deadly when the moment was right. The 48-hour countdown continued, but the Valkyrie had already made their first mistake. They had given their prey time to think. Jack Murphy stood on the abandoned oil platform in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The wind blew hard against his face. Behind him stood 3 other humans, a diplomat, a scientist, and a military officer. They all waited as the small alien craft descended from the sky. Jack had not planned to be here. Just a week ago, he had been training new recruits at the Navy SEAL base in California. Now he was Earth's main representative to an alien species that wanted to conquer the planet. Remember, he told the others quietly, we're just buying time. Agree to nothing. Ask questions. Act confused if necessary. The alien craft landed softly on the platform. A door opened, and 3 Valkyrie stepped out. They were tall and thin with blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. Their eyes were large and completely black. They moved with a smooth grace that made them seem almost like they were floating. The lead alien spoke, and a device on its wrist translated into English. I am Sub-Commander Vextrol. I am authorized to accept your surrender. Jack stepped forward. I'm Jack Murphy. We're here to discuss the terms of the situation. There are no terms to discuss, Vextrol said. You will submit to Valkyrie authority. Your resources will be harvested. Those of your species who cooperate will be allowed to live in designated areas. Jack nodded slowly as if considering this. We need to understand more. How many of your people would come to Earth? What resources do you want? What happens to our governments? The questions were designed to seem reasonable while gathering information. Each answer the Valkyrie gave revealed something about them. Back in Washington, Samantha Wright and her team listened to every word. They recorded and analyzed the Valkyrie language, both the translated version and the original sounds. They're very hierarchical, Samantha told Colonel Carter as they listened. Every statement Vexitral makes references authority from above, and they expect immediate compliance. Carter nodded. That's useful. Rigid command structures can be vulnerable. While the meeting on the platform continued, humans around the world were preparing. In underground facilities, in mountain bunkers, and in hidden laboratories, people worked frantically. Dr. Karen Phillips had been developing new weapon technologies for years. Most had been considered too experimental for use. Now, in a secure facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, she had hundreds of engineers and scientists helping her finish her work. The aliens use a specific energy signature for their ships and weapons, she explained to Colonel Carter during a video call. If we can disrupt that signature, we might be able to disable their systems temporarily. How long until it's ready? Carter asked. 3 days, maybe 4. You have 2, Carter said. On the International Space Station, which the Valkyrie had surprisingly ignored, astronaut Kevin Davis and his crew made careful observations of the alien ships. They move in specific patterns, Kevin reported. When they reposition, there's a moment when their sensor coverage has gaps. About 3 seconds, but it's consistent. Every piece of information was collected and analyzed. Humans had always been good at finding weaknesses in their prey. Now they were doing the same with a species that thought of them as prey. On the oil platform, the first meeting ended with an agreement to meet again the next day. As Jack Murphy and his team flew back to land, Vextral reported to Commander Krelzon. They ask many questions, Vextral said. They seem confused and afraid. Krelzon watched recordings of the humans during the meeting. They are stalling, he said. They hope their governments will find a way to fight. Shall we begin the resource extraction anyway? Vextral asked. No, Krelzon decided. Let them believe they have more time. Their hope will make the final submission easier. We will extend the deadline by 1 week. This was exactly what the humans had wanted. When the Valkyrie announced the extension of the deadline, Colonel Carter called an emergency meeting. We have 7 more days, he told the gathered leaders. We need to use every minute. Around the world, military units quietly moved to new positions, not to their usual bases, which the Valkyrie were watching, but to hidden locations. Weapons were distributed. Plans were made. Samantha Wright hadn't slept in 2 days. Her eyes were red, but she was smiling when she entered Carter's office. We've cracked their communication system, she said. We can't understand everything, but we can identify their command frequencies and, more importantly, we can mimic them. Carter looked up sharply. We can send them false orders? For a short time, yes. Their authentication protocols will catch it eventually, but we might get 15 to 20 minutes before they realize what's happening. This was the advantage humans had always used against stronger predators. They found patterns, they made plans, they set traps. In her mountain laboratory, Dr. Phillips finally had a breakthrough. Her disruptor technology worked. It wasn't powerful enough to disable a large Valkyrie ship, but it could interfere with their smaller vessels. We need to mass-produce these immediately, she told Colonel Carter. And we need a delivery system. Already, working on it, Carter replied. How small can you make them? About the size of a microwave. Why? Because we're going to put them on some very special aircraft. In a hidden hangar in the desert, pilots trained on experimental stealth planes. These aircraft had been in development for years, designed to be nearly invisible to radar. Now they were being fitted with Phillips disruptors. Major Lisa Chen led the pilot training. She had been a test pilot before, but nothing like this. We'll only get 1 chance, she told her pilots. We need to hit their scout ships in the exact right spots. The Valkyrie remained confident. Their scans showed some human military movement, but nothing that concerned them. They had conquered 17 worlds before. Each time, the native species had either surrendered immediately or launched desperate, useless attacks against their main ships. The Valkyrie never considered that this time might be different. They never considered that they were facing a species that had evolved not as prey, but as predators. a species that had hunted and killed animals much stronger and faster than themselves, a species that had spread across their entire planet, not through strength but through intelligence and cooperation. Commander Krelzan waited patiently for the humans to accept their fate. He didn't realize that with every passing hour, the humans were learning more about the Valkyrie, finding their weaknesses, and preparing to strike. The week-long extension of the deadline was nearly half over when Jack Murphy met with the Valkyrie representatives for the third time. This meeting was different. Jack seemed more nervous, more willing to discuss actual surrender terms. This pleased Vextral. He reported to Krelzan that the humans were breaking. Soon they would submit completely. What the Valkyrie didn't know was that Jack's apparent nervousness was an act. The humans were ready. Their first strike was planned for the next day. As the sun set around the world, humans looked up at the alien ships with fear, but also with determination. Tomorrow, the hunters would become the hunted. Sub-Commander Vextral was growing impatient. For 7 days the humans had talked and asked questions, but still had not formally surrendered. He stood on the bridge of his ship, hovering over what the humans called Paris, and looked at the city. Below, "They are not taking us seriously," he told his officers. "We must show them our power." Without asking Commander Krelzan for permission, Vextral gave orders to target a small uninhabited island in the Pacific Ocean. The weapons officer pressed several buttons on the control panel. A beam of bright blue energy shot down from the ship. When it hit the island, there was a flash of light. Then the entire island was gone, leaving only steam rising from the ocean. "Send images of this to the human leaders," Vextral ordered. "Tell them the next target will be one of their cities." In the underground command center in Washington, Colonel Carter watched the video of the island's destruction. His face showed no emotion, but his hands tightened into fists. "How many people were on that island?" he asked quietly. "None, sir," an aide replied. "It was uninhabited." Carter nodded. "They're getting impatient. That's good for us. It means they'll make mistakes." He turned to the communications officer. "Is Samantha's team ready?" "Yes, sir, they can begin the disruption whenever you give the order." Carter checked the time. "Tell all units to prepare. We strike in 1 hour." Around the world, pilots climbed into their stealth aircraft. Each plane carried one of Dr. Phillips's disruptor devices. Major Lisa Chen checked her equipment one last time before closing her cockpit. "Remember," she told her pilots over the radio, "target only the scout ships. Use the weak points Kevin identified. One hit and get out. Don't try to be heroes." In orbit above Earth, Kevin Davis and the crew of the International Space Station made final adjustments to the small satellites they had modified. These weren't weapons. They were electronic jammers designed to add to the confusion when Samantha's team activated their plan. Dr. Karen Phillips watched from her laboratory as the first planes took off. Her disruptors had never been tested in actual combat. She didn't know if they would work against alien technology, but it was their best hope. At exactly 3 p.m. Eastern Time, Colonel Carter gave the order. "Begin Operation First Strike." Samantha, Wright and her team activated their equipment. They had spent days studying the Valkyrie communication patterns. Now they sent out a signal that perfectly matched the aliens' command frequencies. For 17 critical minutes, the Valkyrie ships received contradictory orders. Some were told to change position. Others were told to run diagnostic checks that required them to temporarily lower their shields. Still others were told to recall their scout ships for inspection. The result was confusion. Valkyrie captains tried to confirm orders with their superiors, but the humans were jamming those frequencies. Scout ships moved out of formation, creating gaps in the aliens' defensive screen. That was when Major Lisa Chen and her pilots struck. Their stealth aircraft, already in position high above the target areas, dropped silently toward the confused Valkyrie scout ships. Each pilot had memorized the weak points that Kevin Davis had identified, the junction between the engine housing and the main body of the ship. Lisa's target was a scout ship hovering over the Atlantic Ocean. She dove toward it, her aircraft making almost no sound. The Valkyrie ship was running its diagnostic program, its shields temporarily offline. Lisa activated Dr. Phillips's disruptor device. A pulse of energy shot from her aircraft and hit the Valkyrie ship precisely at the weak point. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the alien ship's lights flickered, its engines sputtered. And then, as Lisa pulled away, the scout ship began to fall toward the ocean below. Similar scenes played out around the world. In China, in Brazil, in Egypt, and in Russia, human pilots and stealth aircraft struck at vulnerable Valkyrie scout ships. 6 ships were hit in the first wave of attacks. All 6 fell from the sky. In his command ship, Commander Krelzon couldn't believe what he was seeing. Warning lights flashed across his control panels. Reports of lost ships came in from around the planet. "What is happening?" he demanded. His communications officer looked confused. "We're receiving contradictory orders, Commander, and some kind of interference is blocking our ability to verify." Krelzon realized immediately what was happening. "It's the humans. They've found a way to mimic our command signals." He slammed his fist down on his chair. "Override all automated systems. Direct communication only, using emergency frequencies." But it took time to switch to the backup systems. By then, 12 Valkyrie scout ships had been destroyed or disabled. Vextrol rushed onto the bridge, his face showing a mixture of anger and confusion. "How is this possible? Their technology is primitive compared to ours." "They found weaknesses we didn't know we had," Krelzon said quietly. "They watched us, they studied us." For the first time, a hint of respect entered his voice. "They hunted us. On Earth, the first phase of the human counterattack ended. The stealth aircraft returned to their hidden bases. Samantha's team stopped their signal disruption before the Valkyrie could trace it back to its source." Colonel Carter looked at the reports coming in. 12 ships down, no pilot losses. He allowed himself a small smile. Not bad for a primitive species. The Valkyrie response came 3 hours later. They launched attacks on military bases around the world, firing their powerful weapons at airfields, naval ports, and army bases. But most of these targets were either empty or contained only outdated equipment. The real human forces had been moved to secret locations days earlier. In the Nevada desert, Jack Murphy watched the Valkyrie attack an abandoned airbase. "They're fighting the last war," he said to Alan Foster, who stood beside him. "They think we'll fight like we've always fought each other." Alan nodded. "That's the advantage of being underestimated. They expect prey behavior, running away or fighting head-on. They don't expect us to think like predators." The Valkyrie attacks continued through the night, but caused relatively little damage to Earth's actual military capability. Meanwhile, human scientists studied the wreckage of the fallen scout ships, learning more about Valkyrie technology with each piece they examined. Dr. Phillips made an important discovery when she examined one of the alien pilots who had not survived the crash. "Their atmosphere suits have a weakness," she told Colonel Carter over a secure video link. "They're vulnerable to certain sound frequencies. We might be able to use that against ground forces if they try to land." Carter nodded. "Develop it. We'll need every advantage we can get." In space, Commander Krelzon gathered his remaining ships into a tighter formation. He had lost scout vessels before, but never so many in a single engagement, and never to a species that should have been so easy to conquer. "We underestimated them," he told his officers. "That will not happen again." But as he looked down at the blue planet below, Krelzon felt something he had never experienced during a conquest mission before: doubt. These humans were different from the other species the Valkyrie had conquered. They didn't fight like prey animals. They fought like predators. And for the first time, the Valkyrie were the ones being hunted. The Valkyrie ships moved into new positions. They spread out over Earth's major cities again, but this time their formation was different. The ships stayed closer together, protecting each other's weak spots. Commander Krelzon had learned from the first attack. "Find the human resistance centers," he ordered his officers. "Use all scanning technology." But the humans had already changed their tactics. The military bases that had been empty during the first Valkyrie attack were now filled with activity again. Soldiers moved equipment in plain sight. Aircraft took off and landed. Ships sailed from ports, it was all a show. They're watching the bases, Colonel Carter told the world leaders in their secure underground meeting room. So that's where we want them to look. The real human forces remained hidden, in mountain caves and underwater facilities, and in secret bunkers built during the Cold War decades ago. The actual planning and preparation continued. Samantha Wright had moved her team to a small farm in the middle of Kansas. From the outside, it looked like any other farm. Underground, it held one of the most advanced communication centers on Earth. They've changed their command frequencies, she told Carter during their daily briefing. But we're still monitoring their ship-to-ship communications. They're getting nervous. Carter nodded. Good. Nervous enemies make mistakes. The people who had been evacuated from major cities before the Valkyrie arrived were now serving a new purpose. Organized into small groups, they acted as spotters, watching Valkyrie movements and reporting through secure channels developed by Olivia Reyes, a young computer expert who had created an entirely new communication system in just a few days. It's based on old technology, actually, Olivia explained to Jack Murphy as they worked together in a mobile command center hidden in the Arizona desert. Radio waves on frequencies nobody uses anymore. The Valkyrie are looking for digital signals, satellite communications. They're not watching for these old methods, Jack was impressed. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. In California, Dr. Alan Foster had made another important discovery. Working with the data collected by Dr. Phillips, he found that the Valkyrie atmosphere suits had a serious vulnerability. They can't handle certain sound frequencies, he explained to Colonel Carter. Not just any sound, very specific tones at very specific volumes. Can we use this? Carter asked. We already are, Alan replied. We've developed portable sonic emitters. If Valkyrie troops try to land, these will disrupt their suit functions. Not enough to kill them, but enough to incapacitate them temporarily. The sonic emitters were quickly distributed to ground forces around the world. Humanity was preparing for the possibility of a ground invasion. Commander Krelzan, frustrated by his inability to locate the main human resistance, sent a message to the Valkyrie homeworld requesting reinforcements. The message traveled through space at speeds faster than light, but it would still take time for a response to come back. What Krelzan didn't know was that his message had been intercepted by Samantha Wright's team. They couldn't stop it, but they modified it slightly before letting it continue. Instead of a request for immediate reinforcements, the message now reported that the situation was challenging but under control. They'll still send help eventually, Samantha told Colonel Carter. But this might buy us a few more days. In orbit, the Valkyrie were facing another problem they hadn't anticipated. What they had believed to be harmless debris from their initial attacks was actually a network of small, stealthy satellites. These had been designed by Ryan Miller, a NASA engineer who had been working on miniature satellites for years. They're too small for the Valkyrie sensors to identify as threats, Ryan explained to Kevin Davis over a secure link to the International Space Station. But when activated together, they can generate an electromagnetic pulse strong enough to temporarily disable Valkyrie shields. Kevin and his crew had been busy modifying more satellites. Working in the weightlessness of space, they had converted communication satellites into weapons platforms, not with guns or missiles, but with specialized equipment designed to interfere. With Valkyrie technology, we're ready whenever you give the word, Kevin told Colonel Carter. Carter looked at the tactical display showing the positions of all known Valkyrie ships. 3 large vessels had moved into position over Washington, D.C., Moscow, and Beijing, the capitals of the world's most powerful nations. Those are their command ships, Carter said. If we can disable them, even temporarily, we might be able to take them out. The plan was daring, perhaps too daring. But humans had always been risk-takers when hunting dangerous prey. Begin Operation Space Strike, Carter ordered. In orbit, Kevin Davis sent the activation signal to Ryan's mini-satellites. Positioned near 3 major Valkyrie vessels, the satellites simultaneously emitted powerful electromagnetic pulses. The alien ship's shields flickered and failed. At the same moment, what the Valkyrie had thought were simply abandoned space stations and satellites suddenly came to life. These were Earth's hastily assembled Space Force, mining vessels, scientific probes, and even some old space shuttle components, all repurposed and fitted with Dr. Phillips' disruptor technology. Kevin led the attack from the International Space Station, guiding the unmanned vessels toward the disabled Valkyrie ships. The repurposed human spacecraft weren't powerful enough to destroy the alien vessels, but they didn't need to be. They just needed to damage them in the right places. The mining vessels, with their powerful drills designed to take samples from asteroids, bore into the hulls of the Valkyrie ships at precisely the weak points identified in earlier observations. Once through the hull, they deployed smaller drones that carried Phillips's disruptors directly into the alien vessels. On his command ship, Krelzon watched in disbelief as warning lights flashed across his control panels. How did they get through? Our shields, he demanded. His technology officer had no answer. The humans were using methods the Valkyrie had never encountered before. They weren't trying to overpower the alien technology. They were finding ways around it. On Earth, Colonel Carter received the first reports of the space attack. 3 Valkyrie command ships disabled, he announced to the tense group of officers around him. Phase 1 complete. But the Valkyrie were far from defeated. The remaining ships quickly adjusted their shield frequencies to protect against the electromagnetic pulses. They moved to protect their damaged companions, using tractor beams to pull the 3 disabled vessels to safety. They adapt quickly, Carter noted. But so do we. The space battle continued for hours. Human ingenuity against Valkyrie technology. By the end, 5 more alien ships had been damaged, though not destroyed. But Earth's makeshift space force was almost completely wiped out. Krelzon gathered his officers for an emergency meeting. These humans, he said, his voice tight with anger and a new emotion, fear. They do not fight like any species we have encountered before. Vextral, who had been watching the battle from his ship over Paris, spoke up. Their technology is inferior, but they use it in ways we do not expect. They do not attack our strengths. They find our weaknesses. For the first time in the history of Valkyrie conquest, they were facing a species that wouldn't be easily defeated. A species that fought back not with desperate direct attacks but with calculated strikes designed to hurt, while minimizing their own losses. For the first time, the Valkyrie were experiencing what it felt like to be hunted. 2 weeks had passed since the Valkyrie first appeared over Earth. In his command ship, now positioned safely beyond the reach of human weapons, Commander Krelzon faced a situation he had never expected. His officers were divided. Some wanted to continue the fight. Others suggested they should leave this troublesome planet and find an easier target. Sub-Commander Vextral was the most vocal. We should destroy their major cities now, he insisted. A full bombardment from orbit, then the survivors will surrender. And destroy the resources we came to collect? Krelzon asked. That would defeat our purpose. These humans, Vextral said, his voice low and angry, are not like the others. They do not run. They hunt us. Krelzon could not disagree. In 2 weeks, the humans had destroyed or damaged 20 of their ships. More importantly, they had adapted to each Valkyrie tactic with surprising speed. While his officers argued, Krelzon reviewed historical records transmitted from the Valkyrie homeworld. He was looking for any mention of a species that had fought back effectively. In the records, he found references to a conflict from centuries ago. The Valkyrie had encountered a species that used similar tactics to the humans: ambushes, targeted, strikes at weak points, and rapid adaptation. That species had been distant genetic cousins to the Valkyrie. They had evolved as prey animals that developed intelligence and technology to survive. Eventually, the Valkyrie had overwhelmed them with superior numbers. But humans were different. Krelzon studied Earth's biological history. Humans had evolved, not as prey but as predators. They were persistence hunters who had developed intelligence not just to survive but to dominate. Their entire history was one of adaptation and overcoming superior forces through strategy and endurance. On Earth, the unified human forces were preparing for their most ambitious move yet. Using captured Valkyrie technology combined with their own innovations, they had developed a way to penetrate the flagship's defenses. "It's a one-way trip," Colonel Carter told the volunteers who would lead the mission. "We can get you to the command ship, but we can't guarantee we can get you back." Jack Murphy was the first to step forward. "I'll go," he said simply. Samantha Wright joined him. "You'll need someone who understands their language and technology." Dr. Karen Phillips added, "and someone who knows how to disable their systems." Carter looked at the three volunteers with pride and sadness. "You understand the risks?" They all nodded. They knew this might be the mission that ended their lives, but could save humanity. The plan was set. Using a modified Valkyrie scout ship, captured during an earlier battle, the team would approach Krelzon's command vessel as if returning from a reconnaissance mission. Samantha had studied the Valkyrie recognition codes and believed she could fool their systems long enough to dock. Once aboard, they would fight their way to the ship's control center and plant Phillips' most powerful disruptor device, one that could disable not just a single ship, but could transmit a signal that would affect the entire Valkyrie fleet. As the team made final preparations, something unexpected happened. Commander Krelzon sent a direct message to Earth's leaders. "I wish to speak with your representatives," the message said. "Not to discuss your surrender, but to negotiate." In the underground command center, Carter and the world leaders debated whether this was a trap. "They've never negotiated with any species before," Carter said. "Why start now?" "Because we've hurt them," Jack Murphy suggested. "We've done what no other species has done, made them doubt their victory." After much discussion, they agreed to the meeting, but with precautions. It would take place on neutral ground, the International Space Station. Each side would send 3 representatives. Jack, Samantha, and Alan Foster were chosen to represent Earth. They would still carry hidden weapons and emergency beacons, in case the meeting was a trap. When the human team arrived at the space station, they found Commander Krelzon waiting with 2 officers. The Valkyrie leader was taller than the others, with markings on his blue skin that indicated his high rank. "You are not what we expected," Krelzon said without preamble. "What did you expect?" Jack asked. "The 17 other species we conquered fought like prey," Krelzon explained. "They either fled or attacked directly. They were predictable." "And we're not," Samantha said. "No. You fight like predators. You study your enemy. You find weaknesses. You set traps." There was a new tone in the alien's voice: respect. Alan Foster spoke up. "That's our evolutionary history. Humans became the dominant species on Earth, not because we were the strongest or fastest, but because we were the smartest hunters." Krelzon nodded. "We have misjudged your species. We believed you were like the others, prey species that developed technology. But you are something we have never encountered before. Predators who became sentient." What followed was not a negotiation for surrender, but the first true dialogue between humans and Valkyrie. Krelzon explained that his species needed certain resources that were abundant on Earth. He proposed a trade arrangement instead of conquest.
"Why the change?" Jack asked directly. "Why not just keep fighting?" Krelzon's large black eyes fixed on Jack. "Because we cannot conquer your kind without destroying ourselves in the process. You have already caused us more losses than all previous
Conquest combined, and you are just beginning to understand our technology." The Valkyrie fleet began to withdraw, pulling back to a defensive position beyond the moon. The immediate threat to Earth was over, but humans knew they could return with a larger force. In the days that followed, the world united as never before. The knowledge gained from Valkyrie technology accelerated human development by decades. Earth's first true space defense force was created, with Lisa Chen as its commander. Samantha Wright continued to study the Valkyrie language and culture. In their transmissions to their homeworld, one phrase appeared repeatedly: "The humans do not know fear as prey knows fear. They know fear as a predator knows it, as a tool for hunting. We cannot conquer such a species without destroying ourselves in the process." 6 months after the Valkyrie withdrew, a new alien ship appeared at the edge of the solar system. This one came alone and sent a message of greeting, not threat. It was from a coalition of spacefaring species, a galactic community that the Valkyrie had never mentioned. "We observed your interaction with the Valkyrie," the message said. "No species has ever turned them back before. We wish to establish peaceful contact." Earth's place in the galaxy was forever changed. Humans were not welcomed as equals by the other intelligent species. They were respected as something more dangerous, predators too powerful to provoke. As Jack Murphy told the United Nations, in his report, "We've been seen as predators, not prey, and in the vastness of space that reputation may protect us better than any weapon." Word spread quickly among the stars. The planet Earth was not hunting ground. It was a predator's den,